welcome to the masterclass, Am I Crazy or Is He a Narcissist? First of all, I want to say I'm sorry. I'm not sorry that you're here, but I'm sorry that you felt the need to be here, because that means that probably you've been through some things, and I'm really sorry for that. But I also want to let you know that there is hope and things do get better, and very brave of you to take action to be here and wanting to learn more and understand what is going on. So I tell you that you should already feel proud of yourself for doing that. So let's get into this course, and I will hopefully give you some clarity and some actionable steps to help you on your own journey. So as we start, let me just change the camera mode here so you can see my presentation. There you go. So as I said, this masterclass, Am I Crazy or Is He a Narcissist, is about understanding narcissism, what really happened, and how to let go. And just a brief introduction about all the topics that we'll be talking about. We'll start by introducing, or we'll start by talking about what is a narcissist. So this word that is so commonly used nowadays, that we hear so often. Let's understand exactly what that means and what is a narcissist. And then we will talk about the dynamics of a relationship with a narcissist, which I think is the most important for you, to help you understand if this is really your case, this is really your situation. Like in all the presentation, we'll be talking about signs and patterns of things that happened to me, and that hopefully didn't happen to you, but probably, so that you can recognize if indeed you are in a relationship with a narcissist and understand that you are not crazy, okay? It's just something that happened to you, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. At the end of the presentation, we'll talk about what steps, what actionable things we can do about it if indeed we are in a relationship with a narcissist, or we just left a relationship with a narcissist, and understand really how the whole thing works and what does that mean for you, what that does to you. So before we get into that, I just want to let you know a little bit about me. So probably if you got here already, you know a little bit of my story, of my background. So, and this is really not about me, it's about you, it's about helping you, but I think it's fair that you know who's talking to you. So just briefly, my name is Diana. You probably know that already. I'm originally from Portugal. I live in Germany. And in 2020, I did my certification in transformational coaching. And I was already very passionate about self-development and psychology and all of that since 2015. But it was only after I was in an abusive relationship and I was healing from this abusive relationship that I felt the need to actually get the certification, to get the skills that I needed to help other women who have been through the same. And the reason is that when I went through that relationship, and after I left even, I felt crazy. I felt completely alone. I felt like no one really understood anything of what I was going through, which is crazy because it's so common and it happens so often, unfortunately. And now that I talk more about the subject, people feel free to talk to me about it, and I understand how often it actually happens. But I know that when you're going through it, how lonely it feels and how confused you feel and how you have need for validation and clarity. And that was actually the reason why I created this course, because I remember what that feels like, and it's really not a nice place to be. So I want to help other women understand that they are not crazy, okay? Something happened to them that makes them feel this way. And after this course, you'll have a lot more clarity, and it's going to be like a light bulb. It's like, that's why. And you will feel much better about the whole situation. This is my promise to you. But yeah, just to give you a little bit of my background and who am I and what is my story. My relationship lasted about a year. It wasn't that long, thank God, because luckily for me, his therapist told him that he's probably a narcissist. And that's when I started Googling about the whole situation and started, collecting information here and there and trying, to find reliable sources to make sure that it was indeed true what was happening to me. And then I read a book called Women Who Love Too Much, And I started putting the puzzle pieces together, and I understood, okay, wow, I need to get out of here. So luckily it only lasted a year, but it was enough to get me to PTSD, anxiety, depression, low to my lowest weight since I was a teenager. And it was a really, really, really difficult journey because, as we'll talk about later in this presentation, worse than losing that person, you lose yourself. And yeah, that's another reason why we are here, and that's another reason why I think this course is essential. And honestly, everyone should take it, everyone should be aware of it, to recognize the signs, because it could happen to anyone. So let's get into that. What is a narcissist? So this word is commonly used these days, and it feels like it's used to describe everyone and everything. It's not really the case. More commonly, and that was my understanding also before I learned everything about narcissistic personality disorder, a narcissist is just someone that is very self-involved and self-centered. And mostly that's exactly what it means. But in reality, or when we talk, by we I mean coaches and people that work in this field, when we talk about narcissists, we're talking about a person that, yes, is self-absorbed and self-centered and has this feeling of grandiose. But more than that, is someone that shows patterns of repetitive behavior that is toxic to the ones around them. And this is exactly what we're talking about here. Before we continue, I want to make this clear, and I wrote here in very bold letters, this is not about diagnosing anyone, okay? Like, narcissistic personality disorder is a disorder, okay? Most of the cases are not diagnosed. It's very known that it's not a disorder that is commonly diagnosed. The difficulty here is not so much about recognizing the signs. It's more about, for a narcissist to be diagnosed, he would have to recognize that there's something wrong with them, different, that would lead them to visit a mental health profession and therefore get diagnosed. In reality, what happens is that most narcissists, because of this inflated ego that they have and this feeling of grandiose, they will never admit that there is something wrong with them. Therefore, they will never, get to the point of looking for a mental health professional and get a diagnosis. Some do get there and still are not diagnosed. It happens a lot in relationships, and I want to make this this is a side note. If you are in a relationship with a narcissist, please do not do couples counseling, because if the couples counseling is not expert on the subject, he will be manipulated as well by a narcissist. This happens a lot. So this is just a side note. So as I was saying, narcissists, that they don't recognize that there's anything wrong with themselves, so they never get diagnosed. And even if they go to a mental health professional, it might be because something is not working as they expected or wanted in their life, and then they would go looking for answers. But they will easily also manipulate the psychologist or the person they're working with, and not even manipulate, like the way they tell the story. Again, the grandiose, the ego, it will be difficult for a professional to actually recognize the symptoms. So those two are like mostly the reasons why they go undiagnosed. Anyway, what we're talking about here today is about you. So this course is made for you. It's not for diagnosing anyone. I just want, with this course, that you recognize certain patterns that are toxic, so that you understand what is happening to you, regardless if we call this person a narcissist or someone with narcissistic personality disorder. I hope that stays clear. So let's focus on, the whole dynamics and what signs you have to look out for. So here in the next slide, Here in the next slide, there is a brief information about different types of narcissists. Again, it's not about them. You don't need to have a PhD in narcissistic personality disorder. You don't need to understand exactly what each is. You will just go down a rabbit hole if you start, digging into it like I did. But you don't have to. What you have to is to understand the whole concept and understand your patterns and understand the patterns that are affecting you, and not really study everything about narcissistic personality disorder or about narcissism. I'll just leave this here so for you to have an idea. of like, there are different types. Okay, most people would recognize the grandiose, so that's like the most common one, the more easy to spot. They are the ones who normally take leadership positions. They are the ones that, you know, when you enter the room, you can almost tell, or when you see their Instagram account, you can almost tell. They're very obsessed with themselves. They only talk about themselves. They have this body language that is like, I am the king of everything, and I'm here. So normally when a person thinks about narcissist or narcissistic personality disorder, those are the ones that you think about, and that may be a reason why it's so difficult to identify them when you're in a relationship, because if the person is not exactly like that, it's hard to tell. So just to give you an example, the vulnerable narcissist or the covert narcissist, they tend, like especially the covert narcissist, they are like very different from the grandiose. They are much more low key. They are not so much into getting attention like in a very obvious kind of way, although they will manipulate everything around them, you know, to feed their own ego. They are much more low key. They are always the victim in every story. Nothing goes right in their life. Like the relationships go wrong, the things at work go wrong, the problems with the family, problems with friends, but they're always the victim. They just don't understand why everything always happens to them. But when you really look deeper, you understand that they are the ones manipulating the whole situation around it. But just to give you an example, because it's a different type that maybe it's not so obvious, even for me, was only after I started learning about narcissism that I realized that I actually had, as a best friend, a covert narcissist. And I realized that, and the key for me to understand it, and I'm just giving you this as a side tip, the key for me was to realize that I was afraid to share good news with this best friend. And then I realized, is this really a friend? And then I started taking a look at the facts of, you know, the dynamic of the relationship, and then I understood. But again, just to give you overview of different types of narcissists, we're not going to get into that because we only have 1 hour to cover everything, and there are things that are more important for you to know rather than classify which type of narcissist. Honestly, I still don't know which one my ex is, because it shows signs of all of them, and to be honest, I never really invested or wasted time getting deep into it to understand, because it just makes no difference. What I have to know is the patterns that I have to look out for, and that's what we are getting into. These are typical behaviors that, you know, appear across all types of narcissists. Doesn't matter if it's communal, doesn't matter if it's a somatic, if it's a grandiose, doesn't matter. What matters is that these are all patterns that will show. Some will show more, some will show less, you know, some will show more in one particular type, but it's basically across all of them. And these are the things that you really need to know. So I left a checkbox behind each of these points, and I invite you to take a screenshot of this and keep it yourself. If you are a subscriber of Letters of Hope, you probably have already a book with the 18 red flags, which is structured a little differently, but it's based on a lot of the same things. But anyway, you can keep this to yourself, because these are the things that you absolutely need to know, and these are the things that you absolutely have to pay attention. Things like they lie and they manipulate the truth. It's difficult to know if a person is lying to you, but my key tip here for you that always works is, don't listen to what they're saying to you, but watch how they behave in regards to other people. Like with my ex, it was very difficult for me to tell that if he was lying to me. He always felt super honest, but I caught him many times lying to his sister, lying to his family, lying to other people, which, you know, made me realize, wait a minute, if he's lying to other people, why wouldn't he lie to me, you know? So these are like very normal traits that show all the time. The substance abuse, it's also common, because I didn't mention before, but narcissists are basically, they have this grandiose, inflated ego, which is basically a compensation for their lack of self-love and self-worth. They are deeply insecure, opposite from what most people think. They are deeply insecure, and because of that, they have the need to inflate their ego and their grandiose. So they believe that they are better and above everyone else, but they don't really experience self-love and worthiness like we do. So they need a validation from people like you and like me and everyone around them. And because of that, they keep following this, repeated toxic behaviors and patterns, because they want to feed that insecurity of them and inflate that grandiose feeling. Substance abuse is quite common because it's a way of numbing. It's a way of coping with living with that emptiness that they live in. Unfortunately, it's true. It's quite sad that they are extremely lonely, insecure, and incapable of really connecting with other people. It's not a very happy way of living. So if you're thinking of getting your revenge, just think that they are already quite miserable, and that's the reason why they behave the way they behave. But anyway, let's go back to the signs. They're always the victim, like I said. In every story, I normally say, if everywhere you go there's a problem, the problem is you. So pay attention how they tell their stories, and if they are indeed always the victim. One interesting way of seeing that is, for example, when they talk about their exes and their previous relationships, normally they will refer to them as crazy, or they were problematic, or there was something wrong with them in every relationship they were. And again, if everywhere you go, I would keep an eye open. They will use techniques like silent treatment, which is quite common way of manipulation. It's in a way abuse as well. They will make you responsible for how they feel. They will make the holidays all about them. I love this one. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas or Ramadan, Hanukkah, whatever holiday you celebrate. If it's not about them, they will either make it about them or ruin it for you, because if they're not enjoying it, no one else should. So it doesn't matter if it's a holiday or it's your birthday or someone else's birthday. They have to find a way to make it about themselves. If it's not about them, then no one else should be enjoying it. And this is like a pattern of behavior as well that commonly happens. They have troubles keeping long-term relationships, and that relationships can be at work, can be with family, can be with partners, can be even friendships. So normally there is a tendency of they're going to ups and downs in their life, in relationships as well. So you will see that they either have very big troubles with their family, or they don't have really long-term friendships. So like you watch for those signs. They use their trauma as an excuse, but if you use trauma as an excuse, it's not an excuse because they have no empathy. But for them, trauma is an excuse for everything. It's quite common as well that they had difficult childhoods and they've been through some kind of trauma. It's possible, it happens, it's actually common. It's a reason to justify bad behavior. It's not an excuse. But for them, it is an excuse, and that justifies them treating you badly because they were treated badly before. Separate to conquer, very important one. It happens quite often in relationships with narcissists. They will try to separate you from the people that you love and care and listen to. This is a way, we'll get into that, to when they gain your trust, they want to make sure that you only listen to them, because then once the abuse starts, you have no one else to go to and you have no one else to tell you that something is not right here. So they will separate to conquer. And this means, for example, you have a best friend for a long time, and they will suddenly start thinking like, this person maybe is not really your friend, or that they don't like to spend time with them, so they avoid you spending time with them as well. Or it sometimes can be even family members. Anything, especially people that they think might be onto them, like realize how they are and tell it to you, they will for sure find ways to in a subtle way make you lose trust in them and make you not spend so much time with them. So watch for that as well. They gaslight, and we'll get into the gaslighting more in this presentation, because it's like a key factor and a key point of a dynamic in a relationship with a narcissist. But I want you to pay attention to these 2 points, because I think these are the most important ones. And the reason I'm referring to them is, one of these things alone doesn't mean anything, okay? Like if someone suffers with substance abuse, doesn't automatically make them a narcissist. Or if they have anger outbursts because you put on a boundary and they don't like it, they will get aggressive. That alone as well, it's not a reason to call someone a narcissist, okay? It demands that there is a combination of very different factors, and we'll talk about a few more shortly, but it's a combination of things. And one of those things alone, it's not enough. But, however, I would always say, regardless of what the other things are on the list, if we're talking about someone that have no values or moral compass, meaning they cannot tell right from wrong, and this was very strong in my ex. He would drive a car into the river to get money from the insurance. He actually did that. So, like, he doesn't care what is right, was wrong, like, even across law, he doesn't care. As long as it benefits him, everything's fine. And I want to call your attention for the fact that there are some cases of narcissists, mostly communal narcissists, but again, this is not important. They will, for example, be part of religious groups. Sorry. They will be part of religious groups and they will use the values and the moral compass of that religion to manipulate others. But in reality, when you look deep, they are not going to, follow them themselves. They might pretend, but until the point that it benefits them, then they don't care about it anymore. So it may look like they have a strong sense of values and a strong moral compass, but it's not really what's happening. But in other cases, you can tell they just don't care if it's right or it's wrong, as long as it benefits them. Like, for example, stepping over a colleague at work to get a promotion. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them as long as it benefits them. And another big one is they have no empathy. They can fake it. They're very good at faking it. My ex was an expert at faking empathy. He could cry on the spot. It was incredible, actually. But they don't really feel it. And then it's very, very difficult to tell. And again, my tip here is it's difficult to tell with you, but watch how they behave with other people and see if they show empathy to them, but then as soon as they turn their back, they say something else. For example, my ex, his sister was beaten up by her boyfriend. She called my ex asking her older brother, please help me. My boyfriend just beat me up. And he was like, yeah, okay, I'm sorry for that. I'll talk to them. And then he turned to me and he said, well, she deserved it. She was out too late. So this is like an obvious case where he was faking empathy towards her because it was beneficial to him. That's another story. But he showed to me that it was actually fake. So it would be difficult for me to say if he was having empathy towards me, but I could tell in his behavior to other people. Like generally it's said, if you want to know his man, don't listen to his words, look at his actions. And the best way to do that is look how he acts when other people are not looking. That's like the best trick. Anyway, going back to the signs, these two for me are like the most important and maybe the most difficult ones to track, to be aware of as well, but definitely the most important, because if a person lacks these two, it's not someone you want to be in a relationship with. Let's talk about the relationship itself, because I think I felt the need to include this here, because more than learning how to recognize a narcissist, it's important to understand the whole dynamic of a relationship. Because if you got to here already, you've probably been through that relationship already. It doesn't matter how long. And you need to understand exactly what happened and what happened to you and how the dynamic looks like. And sometimes it's much easier to recognize through recognizing the relationship rather than, having a checklist and controlling his behavior and understanding if he is one or not. But understanding the dynamics of a relationship with a narcissist or an abusive relationship, you can understand exactly what happened and you can, feel and experience this is exactly what happened to me. So that's why I felt the need to include this here. I put the prince on a high horse and a princess because that's exactly how it feels. And I'm sure you're nodding your head at this point. It's exactly how it feels. It feels like the prince on a high horse that's coming to save you, is coming to rescue. He knows you like no one else, and he sees you like no one else has seen you before, and you also feel that deep connection towards him because you know him deeply, and it feels like a Disney movie kind of thing, and everything is so beautiful at the beginning of a relationship, and that's what we call love bombing. Pretty sure it's not the first time you hear this expression. It's a thing that happens quite a lot, and it's like step one of a relationship with a narcissist. Love bombing is a crucial part for them to gain your trust and to assert influence. So how they do that is by showering you with love. And again, when he says, "I love you" too fast, alone, it doesn't mean anything, okay? But if it's a person that all his exes are crazy, he has anger outbursts, doesn't really listen to you, and then he just comes with an "I love you" out of nowhere, you feel it in your gut that something is off. I know that it's wonderful to hear that someone loves you, especially if, narcissists can be super charming and handsome and convincing. So I know we want to believe that it's true, but something in your gut's going to feel off. And I want you to listen to that. So this is like a big, big sign of love bombing. The relationship feels very rushed. They will shower you with compliments and attention. They will show excessive interest. Despite what most people think, a lot of relationships with a narcissist at the beginning, even the grandiose ones, they are capable of showing themselves like being there for you, in the sense that they will ask you a million questions about yourself. They will show the most interest about your day, what are you doing, what are you eating, who you're with, everything. But this is a phase where they collect information to then use against you, to then use to manipulate you. And also it's a way to make you believe that they are deeply and really interested, so that you learn to trust them and you learn to, to listen to them and be influenced by them. The key point to remember here is, if it feels too good to be true, it probably is. Again, one thing alone is not enough. When I met Christian, my now husband, he also told me "I love you" very early in our relationship, but it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel off. It just felt natural. And he didn't check boxes like all the other boxes as well. So one thing alone is not enough, but that's why you have to understand the whole complexity of the things and understand all the signs. But if more than one starts, like if by now you already nodding your head like 10, 15 times, then I would worry that probably it is what's happening to you, okay? I found this was important to include here because I think this is what a lot of people get wrong about relationships with narcissists or abusive relationships. People think they are even aware of what love bombing is, because it's quite common nowadays, especially like on Instagram, social media, etc. Most people think the relationship starts and he's like a prince on a high horse that's going to save you, and then one day he changes into this frog and that's it, end of story. No, guys, it doesn't happen like this. I mean, we're not that stupid. We would have known right away if it was, from prince to monster in a day and then he stayed always a monster. We would know. We wouldn't be so confused. We wouldn't feel crazy. We would have known how to step out of it already. But it doesn't happen like that. The prince and the frog, the prince and the monster are one at all times. It's the same person that's going to tell you, "I love you and you're so beautiful. You're the most special person on earth." He's also going to be the person to tell you like, "Are you sure you want to eat that? Are you sure you look good in those clothes? Oh, you're not really that smart, are you?" Like, these are just silly examples, but it starts so subtle, you don't really understand what's happening. And there's a whole dynamic to it that people don't get it. So if it was like prince and frog, sure guys, we would have left, 2 weeks later or a month later. But it doesn't happen like that. It's a lot more subtle, and that's why it's also a lot more difficult for even the person inside the relationship to identify that they are indeed in a relationship with a narcissist. So to help, let's look at what are the signs of the abuse and how they subtly, I struggle a bit with this word, subtly start. Like the surprises start to feel controlling. For example, I remember, now that I can spot them, I can see that in my past I actually dated a lot of narcissists. I never had such a like serious relationship until my ex, but I dated narcissists. And I remember this guy showing up at my door at 5 a.m. in the morning, because that's the time I go to the gym, and he just wanted to be nice and drive me to the gym. And like it felt in a way, it feels like, oh sweet, he's interested, he cares, like he's surprising me, how cute. But when you take a closer look, that's not really what's happening, and you start to understand that these things start happening more and more. You go out with your friends, and he just appears by surprise because he wants to surprise you, and you think, oh, that's so sweet. That's controlling. That's not really surprising, you know, with the means of making you happy. And this starts feeling like that with everything. Like the surprises start to feel controlling. The texting starts to feel controlling. Another reason why I don't have on my WhatsApp, people cannot see when I'm online and when I read the messages. This is my trauma response, because at some point I felt controlled, like at what time I was reading and why it took me 7 minutes to reply a message. The compliments start to sound like insults and criticism. So at the beginning you were the most beautiful person on earth, and now you're the most beautiful person on earth, but maybe you're gaining some weight, but that hair color is not good on you. And then at some point you're just fat and your hair looks terrible. But it starts in a very subtle kind of way. What they respected about you are now things that you are not good at. So this is important for me to refer, because a lot of people think narcissists will only go for weak people, whatever that means, or women with low self-esteem, or with trauma, childhood trauma themselves. It's not really the case. Narcissists will look for women that they see above them. So many times there are women that are actually doing better career-wise, money-wise, in everything in life, because that's the way to feed really their ego. When they can bring down a person that they see above them, that's what really makes them, you know, inflate their grandiosity. So at the beginning they will be like, oh my God, you have this job, you have this house, you have this, whatever. And there's like, it feels like they respect and look up to you so much, and then slowly it's going to turn into like, oh, you have this job, but you're really not the smartest, or you're not the best, and I'm not sure you deserve this promotion. These are like, of course, very pinpointed examples, but I think you get the picture. Like it's gonna change around. Suddenly at the beginning he put you on a pedestal, like how amazing you are, and then suddenly things will start to change, and then it's just not so much anymore, and he will start to bring you down. Your boundaries don't matter. Of course they don't matter. His boundaries do, though. People you trust that are not to be trusted, it's the same with like separate to conquer. They want to isolate you. And then slowly they will start with things like sleep control. I didn't know this until much later after my breakup. But I spent weeks where I had like 3-4 hours to sleep. I was struggling at work because I couldn't sleep enough. And I learned much later that this is actually a way of manipulating, because when you're tired, especially sleep deprived, you are much easier to manipulate and much less likely to resist to anything. And to be honest, I think my ex didn't even know exactly or like intentionally did that, but something in his subconscious knew that that would be a good way to help manipulate me and make me more malleable. And I read a lot about it afterwards, and it is indeed a technique to sleep deprive. Silent treatment is a way to manipulate. They want to put you on the edge. They want to drive you crazy, give you anxiety. So silent treatment is just a perfect way. Sometimes they withdraw sex as well. It's also a way of controlling and asserting dominance. But again, all these things happen so subtly and in between other good things that it's very difficult to identify or separate the frog from the prince. You really can't, because it's the same person. Physical abuse, it happened to me, fortunately only once, But even after physical abuse, it was hard for me to say I was in an abusive relationship, and I will explain why. Financial control is a big one, especially if you start living together. First starts with joint accounts, then with you don't need to work, I can take care of you, and then they will take control of all the financial situation, leaving you with no option, especially if at some point you feel like you want to leave the relationship, but you have no financial way of doing that. And gaslighting. Of course, gaslighting is the biggest, most difficult thing to deal with because it's so subtle. You don't understand it's happening until it's too late. This is the thing that's going to make you think that you are crazy because they're so good at it and so subtle that you don't even understand what is happening to you. And to give you an example, if you don't know what gaslighting is like, he did something wrong and you caught him doing that. And sometimes you even have like evidence, like screenshots or a video or a photo, whatever. And they will tell you like, no, that never happened. And because you love and trust them so much, you start to question yourself. And this happens with like the smallest things. They will start doing it with like, oh, I left my key here, but it's not here anymore. And they're like, no, you never left your key there. And then you start like, I'm pretty sure it did. And they're like, no, that never happened. And with the small things every day, you start to really question yourself and doubting yourself. And you trust this person because why shouldn't you? It's your partner. It's, you know, it's the person you love that makes you feel loved. So why wouldn't you trust them? And as that goes on, you start separating from yourself in a way. And that's what makes you go crazy or makes you feel crazy. So I hope that by now you understand the answer to, am I crazy or is he the narcissist? Because this is basically what's happening to you. I want to pinpoint this more because I think is really, really, really important. And it's what took me longer to understand and have awareness, like much longer after the breakup. I understood what gaslighting is, what it did to me. Like you really start questioning your own sanity. You start to listen to no one else but him because, again, you don't know who to trust. So you trust him because he already made you lose trust in everyone else around you. So you trust him more than you trust yourself. You find yourself alone and isolated. You're constantly walking on eggshell, no matter if it's bad news or good news. You don't feel like you can share anything with him because you never know how is he going to react. Because, again, everything is a constant roller coaster. You try harder to prove your love and you invest on changing him, but you lose trust on yourself. What happens as well is that you start to have anxiety, you start to have physical symptoms like lack of energy, sleeping problems, digestion problems is a big one, lack of focus, could be also problems with your menstrual cycle. For example, what happened to me, I didn't understand that I was in an abusive relationship. I didn't understand what was happening. I knew that we had bad days because he had anger outbursts and he had days where he treated me miserably, but I always thought it was because of something that he was going through. On the other hand, my body was like, something is not right here. I remember being in an emergency room in a hospital and I had a business trip to Thailand a couple of days after, and the doctor just looked at me and said, I don't think you should travel anywhere, because I had a throat infection, I had a yeast infection, I had digestion problems, my PMS, my period pains were so horrible I could not walk. That was how bad they got while I was in the relationship. So my brain, not understanding what was happening, I was in a relationship, we had really bad days, but we also had really good ones. So like I was really confused and I was just hoping that things will get better and he will, you know, go back to being the same guy that he was at the beginning, and maybe he's just going through a bad phase and things will get back. Meanwhile, my body's like, no, something is not right. Something is not okay here. And I remember thinking I'm going to die because my immunity was just gone. I was catching everything. I was doing all the tests. The doctors could find nothing. I even had a colonoscopy done. The doctors was like, there's nothing wrong with you. And I swear to God, I again thought I was going crazy. But he was the one that was there for me as well. He was the one who was picking me up from the hospital and taking care of me when I was sick and I didn't know what to do, and I had to have a doctor called home. He was there for me. So again, really confusing. And when someone is there for you when you're so vulnerable and sick, how can you remember that he was the one who made you, so sick to begin with? It's really confusing. It really makes you feel crazy. So I want you to know that you are not crazy, okay? Watch all the signs. Make sure that this is all what's happening to you. Look at things as they are. Don't look at the potential. Don't look at what they might be. Look at things for what they are. Look at him for his actions and tell me that you don't see these things, and tell me that are you really the crazy one? I don't think so. I really don't think so, because I know what it's like to feel like I am crazy. I know absolutely that. But let's look a little further about the cycle of the relationship. So basically that's what happens. It starts with the love bombing, then you go into the abuse, and then there's either a breakup or a breakdown. So like either you try to separate, you try to cut content, and sometimes you are out of the relationship, but you feel like you can't really let go. You're always wondering like what is going on with him and everything. Like you're stuck in this cycle. And there's love bombing, there's hoovering. Hoovering is when, there's a breakup or a breakdown, then they try to bring you back. I don't know about you, but I never got so many flowers in my life as when I was in a relationship with a narcissist. And we would go on in the cycles over and over and over again. And this cycle basically is called trauma bonding. This is what's happening to you. It's commonly known as a Stockholm syndrome because of what happened of a girl that was kidnapped and developed feelings for the kidnapper and empathy and etc. It's a different dynamic, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. So you will feel attached to the person who is abusing you. Because again, I was in so much stress and actually physical pain, but he was there to pick me up from the hospital. It was very, very confusing. You cannot see reality for what it is. And again, this is the person that you love and trust, and it's your partner. So you don't really know what the hell is going on. And you keep going in the cycles to the point that your body actually starts to develop hormones like a drug addiction. And we'll see that a little further ahead. But let's talk first about the signs. Like, if you feel like the relationship is an emotional roller coaster, your arguments give you a high, like a rush of cortisol when you argue, followed by a release of oxytocin and dopamine when you make up, can wrongly lead you to believe that you're in love. This is not love. This is not love. This is drama. This is hormones. That's all that is. You're addicted to this cycle. In a relationship where the trauma bond exists, there's also breadcrumbing. The relationship isn't completely devoid of good moments, exactly like I said. He would be there for me, and I'm sure that your partner is also there for you. That's why it's so difficult for you to actually realize that you're in an abusive relationship, because people think the abusers turn into abusers in one day and never go back. It's not true. There's a lot of good moments in between. That's why it's so difficult to get out of the cycle, and that's why you're stuck on this cycle. You may fantasize about leaving your partner, but you feel like you can't. I remember that I was at home at my place every time we had fights, and I felt at peace when he was not there. I really felt I can breathe, I can just be. But the minute he called me, I'll just go back. And I hated myself for that, and I didn't know why was that happening, but I was going back. That's just what it was, an addiction, just like a drug addiction. And in some cases, this can be a familiar dynamic to someone who lived in a household where there was abuse. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical abuse, but there might be a sense of familiarity here. So it's something to be aware of. Was not my case, for example. I didn't grow up in an abusive house. So, I never thought it would happen to me. I didn't know what an abusive relationship was like. So even when I was in one, even after he physically abused me, he slapped me, he locked me in a room, and made me beg for my life, I still didn't know I was in an abusive relationship because he didn't sleep at night and he was having a bad time. And that's what happened, and that's why it happened. Because in my mind, that's not what an abusive relationship looks like. But that's what it was. So like I was saying before, it gets so deep into you that it becomes like an addiction. Your hormone production goes into this cycle of like cortisol, which is a stress hormone, the craving for dopamine, like you're just dying, you need that, and then it releases oxytocin and serotonin when there's the hoovering, the making up part, and the oxytocin will help you forget all the bad things that happened before. But again, you will forget because he's there for you and he shows you vulnerability as well. So you really have difficulty in just seeing the reality for what it is, and like distancing yourself and see who's the abuser, because you also see the person that's there to rescue, and it's very difficult to separate the two things. So now you probably realize, okay, that makes sense, that explains a lot, but how do you let go? How do you break this cycle? It's damn hard. It's damn hard. And I'm telling you, if you're still in that relationship, don't judge yourself, okay? Be kind to yourself. You've been through so much and it's not your fault. And I want you to remember that every single day. It's not your fault, okay? But there are things you can do about it. And it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to change in a day. It's very difficult. It's like a drug addiction. And you cannot expect a drug addict to just like change in a minute. It's not going to happen like that. Be kind to yourself. It's a step-by-step process. You need to rebuild that self-confidence that he took away from you. You need to understand what's happening. You need to learn to trust yourself again. How else could you make decisions, for yourself and for your life? And if you don't trust yourself. So it's not an easy step, but I'm going to let you know about a couple of steps that you can start doing right now to help you rebuild that self-confidence, to help you rebuild that trust, that self-love that you need to embark on this journey for you, so that you can break this cycle, which I know it's not an easy one. I've been there. Step number 1, call it what it is, for the love of God. Abuse is abuse. It doesn't have to be physical. I tell you, my ex slapped me, locked me in a room, made me beg for my life. You know what I did after? I hugged him. I hugged him because I knew he was struggling with something. He was going through something so bad and so difficult in his life, and I just had so much empathy. I hugged him. I understood in that moment that, things were worse than I ever thought. And something had happened to me that I never thought in my life I would tolerate. And I had a really hard time call it abuse, even when he slapped me. But I know now for a fact I was entitled to call it abuse from the start. I didn't need that slap to call it abuse, and you also don't. If he's doing all those things, if he's gaslighting you, if he's destroying your mental health, your self-worth, doesn't matter if he's also there for you to hug you after. Abuse is abuse. And if you don't call it that, what you're telling yourself, you're telling your brain is, again, you're excusing his behavior. You are accepting his behavior. But when you call it abuse, I promise you, it's going to be much, much harder for you to excuse his behavior. So call it what it is. It's abuse, okay? Keep that in mind. You don't have to say that to him. You don't have to say that to anyone else, but keep that in mind to yourself. I am in an abusive relationship, or I just left an abusive relationship. Say that to yourself, because when you talk about abuse, you start removing yourself from that other person. And that, for me, this is step 1. Absolutely. He will not change. This is something you have to keep in mind. I don't care if he has a diagnosis for narcissistic personality disorder or not. So you might use that as an argument, like, oh, you can only say that he will not change if he actually has an official diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, which is known to not have a cure. There's no cure to that, okay? There are treatments that can ease the symptoms, but it's like an elastic that will always go back to place. So there is no cure for NPD. But now you might say, I don't know if he has NPD because he was not diagnosed. It doesn't matter. I just wanted to ask yourself this question. If every time he does you wrong, you go back to him, why would he change? Why should he? He gets all he wants. My ex, like a month or two after he hit me, I remember he told me, he looked me straight in the eye and said, I hit you and you came back to me. So like, they know they get away with stuff. So it doesn't matter who he is. It doesn't matter what description is. It doesn't matter what kind of narcissist is. You get what you tolerate. If every time he does you wrong, you accept him back, why should he change? Keep that in mind. I need you to remember this. Make a list. This is like mandatory. You have to, it doesn't matter if you're still in the relationship or you're out of the relationship. I need you to make this list. Take a piece of paper or take your notes on your phone. I need you to make this list. Your brain is programmed to erase bad memories. It's a survival mechanism. It's just part of who we are as human beings. You want to make a list to make sure that you keep reminding ourselves of who he truly is. Make that list, keep it close to you, because your oxytocin is going to make you forget everything, and it's going to make you think you're in love and make you think that you guys, have the most lovey-dovey relationship, and you will never remember again that he was the one who put you into this emotional stress. Make that list. Make an exit plan. I know that it's hard. I know that if you're trapped in that cycle, if you're trapped in trauma bonding, I know it's difficult. I know because I did it many times. Take a breather. Stop asking, why can't I leave? And ask, what do I need to be able to? What do you need? Do you need support? Do you need to change houses? Do you need a separate bank account? Do you need to tell your family? What do you need? Doesn't matter what it is. Make a plan. What do you need? Stop asking, why can't I leave? We know you're trauma bonded. What do I need to be able to leave? This is super, super important. Seek support. So this is the last step, and to me, the most important one. You have to seek support. This is not the usual breakup. This is not I go have drinks with my girls and everything will be fine breakup. Especially if you already left the relationship, you probably know this. They will make your life harder during the breakup and after the breakup. So you have to seek support from your friends, from your family, from someone that you trust. Listen, I know it's very difficult because you feel judged. You feel like no one understands. You will hear people saying things like, oh, you must have liked it. Why did you stay? People don't understand trauma bonding. People don't understand what you've been through. People don't know him like you do. I'm sure you've said this many times. But listen, you need support. And especially when you want to heal after you left that relationship, you have to make sure that you clean those wounds deeply. So you make sure that you never fall for a relationship like this again. I use here the picture of a hand with a cut because sometimes it's easier to think of our physical health think of our mental health as a physical health, because we are so good at ignoring our mental health. And if you don't clean these wounds, like what we normally do is like, I'm fine, and you just put a Band-Aid on it, or I just call the other ex, or I go back on Tinder and find someone else because you deal with so much anxiety. You just need a way to cope. You need a way to make it stop. And you put a Band-Aid on it and move on with your life. And then what happens? When you look closer into that wound, you left all the junk in there. And every time you try to connect with another person, that's going to pinch you. It's going to pinch you hard. And I can tell you that Christian, my now husband, is the kindest, sweetest, most loving man I ever met in my life. Had I not done the work to heal myself, I would never be in a relationship with him. He's not my type. He's not the guy that I'm attracted to. He doesn't feed into my drama. He doesn't fall into my unhealed patterns of what I seek out for in a relationship, I would have just said, okay, bye. But I made sure that I made the deep cleaning of all the wounds, that I was healed, that I know, like, I'm safe, I am fully connected with myself, I have self-trust, I don't need someone in my life, I want someone, it's different. And then I was open to receive Christian. And I beg you, you need to find someone to support you through the journey. It's not a normal breakup. And one thing I want to make clear, not every mental health worker understands trauma bonding and understands narcissism. I cannot tell you how many times I had women come to me and say, I talked to a therapist. They made me feel worse. They made me feel like it was my fault. They made me feel like I was the crazy one. They made me feel like I could have done things, different, and like make them feel like the abuse was their fault, because they don't understand how narcissists work. They don't understand how trauma bonding works. So I want to be clear, whoever you decide to work with, that you should seek for support. Make sure it is someone that understands abusive relationships. Yes, you are in an abusive relationship. I'm going to say this over and over again. Understands abusive relationships and understands trauma bonding. Make sure of that. It's essential for your healing journey. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit the reason why I created the program that I call Let Go, Move On, and Thrive. I don't like the band-aids. I know what happens when you put those band-aids. The reason why I met my abusive ex is because I didn't heal from my previous relationship and I immediately jump into the next one. Have I made that healing process, I know that me and my ex wouldn't have lasted more than 2 weeks. But I didn't. I wanted to put a band-aid because I didn't want to feel that pain. I didn't want to look into my daddy issues. I didn't want to look at anything else in my past. I knew it. I got it. I have it under control. I drink a glass of wine with my friends and I move on. And where did that take me? And especially after an abusive relationship, it's even worse. It just gets deeper, it gets dirtier, it gets a massive, ugly scar, and you don't want that. So that's why I developed this coaching program, Let Go, Move On, and Thrive. We'll work step by step on your healing journey. We'll first do the let go phase, and the let go phase is painful. The let go phase is, let's go into that wound and take out each little piece of glass that was left there. Let's go into that wound and put all this alcohol and disinfecting materials to make sure that it's clean and healed. And then we go into the move on phase. What happened? How did that happen? How did I get here? What are the things in me that got me attracted to it in the first place? What are the things in me that I can make sure will never get me falling for this again? Who am I in a relationship? Who do I want to be, and who do I want my partner to be? All of that, like really understanding, learning yourself so that you can move on in a more fulfilled and content and complete way. And then we'll thrive. Then we'll make future plans. Then we'll create a life of joy, a life of purpose, where you're so connected with yourself that no other man will ever make you question if you're crazy. And these are the 3 steps of the coaching program that I'm offering. You can see below more information about it and how to get to me, and we can work together and make sure that you clean all these wounds, you let go, you move on and thrive. But you need to go through the 3 phases. And again, regardless if you're working with me or any other person, make sure it's someone that understands deeply what you've been through, because it can be dangerous, otherwise can do more harm than good. I leave you for now. I hope you enjoy this class. I hope you have more clarity now. I know a lot of things were probably painful to hear, but they are necessary so that you can heal. Let's let go, move on, and thrive. See you soon.